today is a great day. We have a special guest. His name is Jim Bailey, and we're going to let him tell us a little bit about himself right now. So, Jim, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Jim Bailey. I'm a managing partner with SenseMakers LLC. I've been a consultant now for 16 years. I retired 10 days before 9/11 in the United States Marine Corps. I was an intelligence officer when I retired. I had both enlisted and officer time. And my path, post 9/11 was pretty clear. I wanted to take the talents and experience that I had and apply it towards counterterrorism. I was working for a company called EG&G Technical Services, and they were standing up their Homeland Security practice, and I was one of the original members of that. And it was really interesting because it was kind of like building an airplane as it was flying through the air. The Department of Homeland Security was standing up, and a bunch of different programs. And since that time, I've worked a lot of planning, training, and exercise projects literally all over the country, primarily working with public safety personnel, emergency management, public health, transportation folks. The company that I work for right now, SenseMakers LLC, again, I'm a managing partner there. We're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, again, specializing in professional service consulting services focused on planning, training, and exercising. Again, working with public safety and emergency management.
I want to talk to you a little bit about today about consulting specifically. So if someone was thinking about getting in as an EM, maybe they're either beginning their career or maybe they're even ending their career. So if someone is thinking about going into consulting, what are the steps that they should take?
Well, I think there's two paths, Todd, that someone, again, let's kind of go back to someone who's looking to start into a Homeland Security emergency management career. You can go sort of the public side and try and get a position, within a city or county emergency management agency. Or you can go into, I think, the consulting world, which, was kind of what I did when I first started, in the private sector. There's kind of advantages and disadvantages to both. I think an advantage of going private sector first is that, I think you're going to be, a jack of all trades because you're going to be focused on a number of different projects. You'll be involved with a number of different clients, and you'll get a chance to really learn the trade, by working with a variety of different clients. Whereas I think if you start out in a public, on the public side within an emergency management agency, you might have an experience where I'm working a specific project, or I'm a project manager for a specific project, or I'm just working within my jurisdiction, so I don't necessarily get exposed to a lot of different things. So the obvious, nice part about the public side is job security. Relatively speaking, again, there's challenges associated with that, but I think less challenges on that side than opposed to the private sector. The private sector, it is a business, and it is all about billable hours, and taking care of the clients that you have and finding new clients to work with as well.
Well, that leads me into my next question. So I know one of the biggest challenges in emergency management is the budget. And always trying to have the budget. So, how do you propose, and how do you guys get money for your projects? I mean, I guess it would be through the bid process, but do you guys work with, cities and states and counties that are having budget issues that maybe might bring you guys in because of that?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, life before 2011 was really different. I mean, we had more work. I mean, I started out working out of my house as kind of a one-man shop, in 2002. And, come 2005, we opened a full-time office in San Diego. And by 2007, I had 3 offices and 25 people working for me in 2 different states. So the Homeland Security monies were flush back in the 2000s. 2011, it started to change. Obviously we went through the Great Recession and a lot of cities and counties downsized. So we did see an uptick in our business because there just wasn't a lot of people to do the work that needed to be done within the public sector. But after 2011, we started to see a drawdown in the grant monies. There's less EOC cities. I think even the SHISH-GAP grant funding from DHS has declined. So we've seen, we've seen some changes. There are some challenges. You don't see the big dollar programs anymore at the state and local level. At least I haven't seen it. You see a lot of one-off, X number of dollars for a tabletop or X number of dollars for a full scale. But you don't see, the big programs, the several $100,000 programs to do a series of exercises, or training deliveries. So it's changed post 2011. And we've had to change along with it as well.
It's changed everywhere. It seems to be that we do go in ebbs and flows. I'm wondering if we're going to see kind of going back to the traditional emergency management model now that we have these storms that just hit the the southeast, and of course the stuff that's sitting here in California, and then with all those with the rains and the dams and stuff like that. I wonder if we're going to go back into infrastructure and mitigation and that type of stuff. That's going to be a focus.
Yeah, I think emergency management today is challenged in a number of different areas. I just went to the San Diego County Unified Disaster Council meeting this morning, and it started out with a briefing from the LECC, the Fusion Center in San Diego, talking about the latest ISIS tactics that they see in their monthly publications. If you can believe they actually have a monthly publication, and then they transitioned into sort of the real world storm related recovery, storm update for what's coming this weekend, what we can expect. And then from there, they transitioned into the complex coordinated attack grant program. And it was just really, I sat there and I listened to sort of the topics that they were bringing up. And I thought to myself, my goodness, it's not your grandfather's emergency management anymore. There's a lot of things to focus on. And I think you kind of get spread in a number of different areas.
It's funny because even the program that I teach at Coastline Community College, we are an emergency management / Homeland Security or, a program. And,
sure.
And it seems like there's that nexus into both, and I see that for sure. And it makes sense. But, it seems like I said, we ebb and flow, and we kind of, at one point, when we had EOC monies flowing, it almost seemed like I was a Homeland Security guy more than an emergency management guy. And then, when the storms come up, then it's like, then you're back and doing the traditional, emergency management, trying to save the floodwaters from going into people's homes.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
definitely.
I think you have to focus on both. You can't afford to be a specialist in one area over another. I think you got to be more of a generalist, kind of the all hazards type of individual.
Right.
Protection, prevention, mitigation, response, recovery. You've got to be able to cycle through all of that for basically all threats.
I see the threat analysis, hazard analysis being a huge part of what we do now in EM more than
sure.
just the response.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So earlier, before we started doing the official recording here, we started talking about workflow. And I was telling you that one of the things that I'm really working on right now is using technology to improve the workflow in the EOC. And I know you're saying you're working on some of that kind of stuff. Can you kind of tell me what work you're doing with workflow?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see there's three key areas within EOC operations that we think if we can improve these three, we can drastically improve the overall effectiveness of the EOC. And those three areas that we focus in on are communications, information management, and workflow. On the workflow side, what we see is within a lot of EOCs is a lot of emergency managers, and again, this isn't a condemnation of emergency managers, but I think it's just a natural sort of temptation that if I just buy Web EOC, it's going to solve my workflow problems. Okay? And in fact, I would even hazard to guess that perhaps maybe even those folks selling different technologies might even sort of purvey that, or put forth that their system is going to solve a number of workflow problems. But the reality of it is that what we preach is that the the first thing you got to do is you got to sit down and you got to hammer out your information requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we call it the 5-layer approach. Hammer out your information requirements, identify where you get that information, okay, then identify what you do with that information. In other words, who's going to do the analysis? You know, do you have 1 or 2 people sitting in SITSTAT that are going to, quote unquote, do the analysis on everything that comes in? You know, if you do, I think you're kind of setting yourself up. So the analysis is the 3rd step. The 4th step is, who do I have to share this finished, I've gone from information to intelligence. Who am I going to share that information with? Who are my stakeholders? You know, how am I going to create, no kidding, the common operating picture? What are those components? You know, we like to preach, and again, I think people kind of come back to the common operating picture is they think, you know, some sort of computer display up on a screen.
Right.
Well, certainly it can be that, but it's also the conference call. It's also the floor briefing. It's also the sit rep that comes out, you know, every couple of hours or whatever the time frame is. It's all of those things, you know, and what we find is that folks don't necessarily know, you know, how to access what, you know, what's out there and then how to access it, you know. So we stress that you've got to identify that stuff up front. And then finally, once you've worked through those 4 levels, then and only then do you bring in technology, because we believe, and I've seen it again for 16 years, if you don't go through those 4 steps and develop your workflow and how that's going to occur before bringing in technology, and you bring in technology up front without doing those 4 steps, it's just chaos. It just exacerbates the problem, honestly. You know, and I can give you a number of different examples. I mean, we've worked with clients where I'm in an exercise environment and I hear, you know, I see somebody feverishly typing away on a computer. And I ask them, what are you entering into Web EOC? Well, I'm entering everything into Web EOC. Why are you entering everything into Web EOC? Because I was told to enter everything. Right? And then, you know, fast forward to the hot wash of that exercise, and you've got the SITSTAT leader that says that she couldn't pull the sit rep together in a timely manner because she had to wade through a mountain of noise.
Right.
Information that had no value that was entered into Web EOC. She had to wade through a mountain of noise to pull out the nuggets that she needed. And had those nuggets been identified up front, again, with your information requirements and where you're getting it, and the indicators associated with it, you know, that she wouldn't have had to gone through that. So that's part of what we've done. I guess the other thing, if you don't mind me kind of continuing on that vein.
Please do.
The other thing that we've done is, you know, when I look at EOCs, that, you know, most emergency management agencies have an emergency operations plan. Okay. And then they have EOC position checklists. Right. Okay. Now those EOC position checklists, I kind of liken to sort of being the individual parts of a car. So imagine you had a car that was broken down into its individual pieces in a giant gymnasium, and you had never seen a car fully assembled, right? I liken the position checklist is those individual parts of the car. So we walk around and here's a carburetor, and this is the tire, and this is a steering wheel, and this is a fender, you know. But you know, and when you're all said and done, you know what those individual pieces are, but you don't necessarily know what it looks like when it's all put together. and that's the EOP doesn't address that, and the checklists don't necessarily. So you've got something missing in the middle, and the middle is basically what I call the glue, and the glue is the coordination process. Mm-hmm. How do we get from EOC activation to turnover or demobilization? What are we doing during that 12-hour operational period?
And we'll be right back after a brief message.
Emergencies happen, whether they're related to medical emergencies, threats of physical violence, weather-related, or other. One of the most difficult things during an emergency is to find help and quickly and efficiently communicate with all parties, regardless of whether you're an administrator, law enforcement, or the end user. With Titan HST, we help distort time by creating high-tech yet simple-to-use mobile-based applications that connect you with the people who can help you. At Titan HST, we believe in the power of people.
Are you ready for the unthinkable? Call our friends at High Speed TACMed. They provide custom emergency planning and training that saves lives. With years of experience in law enforcement, search and rescue, responding to and managing large-scale incidents, HSTM will evaluate and prepare written plans, training sessions, drills, and debriefs, leaving you with the necessary tools and experience that can save lives. Call HSTM today to discuss your specific needs, and the staff of High Speed TACMed will help ensure that you're ready and are in complete compliance. Call High Speed TACMed today, 805-419-0024. Again, that's 805-419-0024. The friendly staff at HSTM is standing by.
Bringing out bodies now. Get someone to the back as soon as you can. Rescue personnel. I got at least 3 to 7 hits.
And now, back to Jim Bailey.
What we've done, we've built out a EOC coordination playbook, okay, that breaks the planning P, and everybody's got their own version of the P, it seems. You know, some people are using the field P, some people have modified it to, you know, for EOC operations. But we've built basically a 4-phased framework that you can overlay on any planning P, regardless of the individual steps. And what we've done is we've taken, say, like there's 10 or 11 steps in a planning P, we've broken it down into 4 phases. Okay, and the 4 phases are direction, coordination, planning, and transition. Okay, think of it kind of as like the four quarters of a football game.
Right.
Okay, that's a little easier to get your mind around than the 11 steps. You know, everybody has a copy of the planning P in their EOC, but how many people have really broken that down? You know, like, here's what we do at this particular step, or here's what we do, in our case, in this particular phase. So the direction phase, it's all focused on, you know, as you're moving up the stem of the P, again, you've activated, people have shown up. Okay, now what are we going to do? It's all about just gaining and maintaining situational awareness. What do we got out there? Okay, you know, let's figure out what we've got. Let's develop some course of action. You know, let's either, if we don't have standing objectives, let's develop some objectives and let's get working. Right? That's essentially the direction phase. The coordination phase, okay, now we've been working at this thing. You know, we're getting more information. We have a better understanding of what's happening out there and what we're doing about it. But are we achieving our measures of effectiveness? Are we doing the right things? And are we achieving our measures of effectiveness? You know, that's the coordination phase. So that's focused on current operations. Planning, as you know, that's building your EOC action plan. So you're focused on, you know, what do we think is going to be happening in the next 12 hours, right? Mm-hmm. We kind of put on, you know, our crystal ball. We just have a different orientation, whereas the coordination phase was focused on current operations. The planning phase and building that EOC coordination plan is more focused on, you know, what we think we're going to be doing in the next 12 hours. So from a situation standpoint, what's happening with a threat? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Is it staying the same? What do we think it's going to be like, for instance, in the next 12 hours? Triage. If your EOC is activated, it's because you've got a complex operational environment underway. And in a complex operational environment, you know, you're going to have not just one problem, you're going to have a whole host of problems.
Right. Okay.
How do you rack and stack that in terms of who's going to get resources? You know, where are you paying attention? Where are you collecting information? So the triage piece is important too. What's that going to look like in the next 12 hours? Operations. What's the operational footprint? Is it expanding? Is it contracting? You know, is it staying the same? Logistics. You know, what resources are we likely to need in the next 12 hours? Public information. You know, what will we be telling the public? What do we need to tell the public in the next 12 hours? So you kind of work it, and then transition, you know, it's all about the handoff. You know, how many times have we heard about folks that, you know, that don't necessarily, you know, your relief shows up, you know, you shove some papers in their face and out the door you go. Okay. We kind of preach that, you know, that there should be, you know, some structure to that transition phase. You know, a briefing should be developed. That briefing should be, you know, delivered to the oncoming EOC staff. And then, you know, before, you know, departing, there's individual turnovers that go on as well. So we've built out a playbook that basically takes you from activation through deactivation or to turnover and what each section, branch, and unit does during the direction phase, the coordination phase, the planning phase, and the transition phase. Right down to the position level.
That's awesome.
Okay. And you want to talk about coordinated workflow. Imagine everybody in the EOC online. Hey folks, we're in the direction phase. Okay. And here are our assignments. Here's what you contribute to the meeting that basically anchors the direction phase. Some people call it the crisis action meeting. There's a whole host of different names for it,
right.
but there's a meeting that basically concludes each phase. Okay, the coordination meeting is the meeting that concludes the coordination phase. So everybody in the EOC knows where they are in the P, right? They know what phase they're in, and they know what they contribute because they've got the EOC playbook there that basically says, here's what I need to be providing to my branch, coordinator or my section coordinator as they prepare to go into, that crisis action meeting.
That's kind of what I was alluding to before. Is I'm looking at non-traditional, not like a web EOC type thing, but more like a project management workflow. One of the things I'm kind of playing with is a software. It's fairly new. It's called Freed Camp. It's an online program. It's just kind of sticky notes, if you will, and you tell people what they do, and they let you know when they're done. And that's just something I'm playing with. But workflow is the key to everything. I agree with you there. It's funny, we talked about the coordination aspect of it, and I was talking to Eric Holdman from Emergency Management Magazine, and and he was saying, and he's been around this job for 100 years or whatever. Sorry, Eric. But he was telling me that he likes using the term, instead of an EOC and EEC, an emergency coordination, ECC, an emergency coordination center. And I thought, kind of going with that is so true, because as emergency managers and work in this field, it is more of a coordination than it is the operation aspect of this. So what you're saying here is some really good stuff.
Yeah. So the EOC doesn't command and control anything.
Right.
Okay. They coordinate resources. They coordinate information. So I would agree. I think if we could get enough people on board, I think changing from an EOC to an ECC could have some positive effects.
Oh yeah. It's kind of one of those things, like when he told me that, I was talking to him last week, and I was like, that kind of popped in my head. I'm like, I'm going to start feeding that to my students, maybe when they move out, and as us old guys kind of move along into the retirement phase, these guys can kind of change the world a little bit. I do have a couple more questions here for you, and
sure.
One, I'm going to let you do the shameless plug, if you will. So, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
Yeah, so we've got a website. We've redone our website, www.sensemakersllc.com. That's SENSEMAKERSLLC.com. And that has all of our contact info and everything that we offer. It's also about us and the services that we provide.
That's awesome. And and for full disclosure, I worked with Jim on a few projects when I was up in Orange County, and always a consummate professional and always a good guy to go to. So I'll endorse you for there.
I appreciate that.
No problem. Okay, and this is the toughest question of the night. I'm telling you this one, and
okay.
And so you have a couple seconds to think about this. But what is the number one book that you give to a new person breaking into the business?
That is a hard one, because I'm a pretty avid reader. I can tell you a book that I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
It's called The Obstacle is the Way. I think that would be a great book for a person to read for a number of different reasons. One, it helps, I think, sort of shape your perception and how you look at obstacles and how you have to be adroit to solve problems and turn the obstacle into an advantage. I think that's a tremendous book that would be good. The other book that if you can, I think you can find it actually on Amazon, in terms of customer service, which again is very important. The Marriott Way. If you've ever stayed at the Marriott, and I'm a platinum Marriott member, I just always admire process. And they obviously have a process. And their customer service, I think, is pretty stellar. And if you read that book, The Marriott Way, I think, you come away with a better understanding of what it means to serve others. And again, I think within emergency management, that's what we're all about, service. And I think that would be a good book to read. I think those two books, if a person was to start there, I think they would be in good stead. A third book that I would throw out, the Checklist Manifesto. I think that's a good book talking about the importance of checklists. Again, I kind of, talked about how there needs to be something more than checklists and emergency operations plans, some kind of glue, that pulls the process together. But nonetheless, checklists are important, and the author spends a great deal of time talking about the importance of checklists and how to create meaningful checklists. Those 3 books.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the checklist thing, I agree with you there. I have a really pretty extensive checklist system, for the guy who walks in, you hand him pretty much you can hand anybody my section sheet or section position checklist. They'll be able to get up on it and running, as far as what to go through. But yeah, You're right. I mean, there's more than just that than the EOC. That's just the starting point. And I have seen people who have thought that was the end all be all. I have my checklist and I'm ready to go. And, sounds like an Air Force pilot. They're just ready to go after the checklist.
We have a course called Situational Awareness and Common Operating Picture for the EOCs. And before we even do introductions, we get the students in their seats, and before we do introductions, we show them a video clip of the opening scene from Gladiator with Russell Crowe. I don't know if you've seen that movie or if you remember that movie, but basically what you have is you have 2 armies facing each other in battle. You have the Romans on one side, and you have the Germanic barbarian horde on the other side. And we ask the students to watch the clip and to observe how each side approaches the battle, because we think it's a metaphor for emergency management. Okay, on the Roman side, you have command, you have control, you have resources, logistics. Obviously, people are trained. They've got a process. They've got a plan. On the barbarian side, you just have a lot of folks that are clad in fur and clubs, and they're just gonna run front on into the Romans and try and overwhelm them that way. They don't really have a lot of command and control or logistics or anything like that, or any kind of coordination. And we see at times EOCs that operate that way. When a crisis happens, they come together. They don't necessarily have a whole lot of process, but they just run headlong into the problem, and eventually they solve it. But our question is which do you want to be more like? Again, it's not being the lockstep, Romans, but having a way, having a process, defining the how you're going to get from point A to point B. Can you call an audible? Yeah. Are things flexible? Do things change out there in the field? In a complex operational environment? You bet. But if you've got a roadmap, or if you've got a playbook, you can call an audible from that playbook. But you got to have something to start with.
Right.
So.
I could talk to you all evening about this, but I don't want to do too much more of your time. So Jim, thank you so much for taking time to talk about the processes. That's one of the areas that I really do enjoy. I like the process. I think it's why I do what I do for a living.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast with our guest Jim Bailey, talking about processes and workflow in the Emergency Operations Center, or the ECC, Emergency Coordination Center, whichever one you want to go with. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and leave a comment in your iTunes, Libsyn, Stitcher, whatever platform you're listening to us on. We do have some new things coming up. We have EM Weekly on the news, as will be on Mondays, and we're looking to do Tech Talk on Tuesdays. So if you have any tech ideas, give us a jingle, let us know what you're thinking, and we'll incorporate those into our new platform. So again, thank you very much and have a great day. If you're trying to reach people in the emergency management and response space, EM Weekly is a place for you to advertise. Each week, we are bringing in guests from around the world to talk about best practices and trends in emergency management and response. We also have the blog on EM Weekly's website and the EM Quarterly e-magazine. For more information, please email Brian at eamweekly.com. EAM Weekly is a division of the WEMT Institute.